Hello everyone, and welcome to Lit Bashing, where the L stands for Legions, the I stands for Imperialis, and the Bashing stands for Kit Bashing. So there's been a little break in longer form videos for a couple of weeks on account of the Warhammer World Tournament I last minute got tickets to, and last minute painted up the army with which to battle. And battle they did. I had my very first experience of Warhammer World, finally making the pilgrimage, and what a worthwhile experience it was. Even ignoring the fact that I managed to scrape the top 10 players on my first tournament and coming away with both hobby awards, it was just such a fun, nerdy time. Fitz wants to say hello. Now, there are plenty of wrap-up videos coming this week. There's an interview with the champion of the weekend talking about his frankly insane optimized list and how he was able to create something so efficient whilst still being so goddamn gorgeous on the table, telling such a great story. Also a chat with the player who was voted best opponent, so we don't just get to see the best player, but we also get to see the best player. And of course, a deep dive into the various aspects of the army I brought as well. We're also getting close to May, so we've got the next character lit bash in the pipeline, and I think it's time the Solar got some love this month. But for now, have just my voice and my face, now that I've broken that seal over the weekend. Waxing lyrical about the 10 things I learned this weekend. I'm saying 10 things I learned because most are good, some are not so good, and a couple are just, huh. So I guess then, let me introduce the good, the bad, and the glee of the Legions Imperialis Warhammer World Weekender. Thing number 1, every army looks absolutely flipping gorgeous. I've said this before, but Epic Scale is so forgiving a scale. Even with just a single contrast wash and a dry brushed base, a full army on the table looks incredible. However, only about 2 of the 30 armies were just wash and dry brush. The vast majority were clearly labours of love with incredible care and detail put into every single mini. Heck, the super optimised min-maxing win list was fully edge highlighted, even the infantry, with every goddamn eye lens painted, every single shoulder pad with a custom teeny tiny Legion transfer. He even shaved all the filler gates from between the weapons, and that was the winning competitive list. That didn't even make the top 3 in the painting competition. That's how insane the quality of the work was this weekend. I suppose it makes sense that for the first event of a game that costs £70 to attend in the middle of the country, statistically pretty far away from the potential pool of attendees, that those who did attend would have put the effort in. But even still, that effort was jaw-dropping. If you're considering Legions but think you're not a good enough painter at such a teeny tiny scale, don't listen to yourself. Your painting will look even better at 8mm. Don't you worry. Thing number 2. The first turn will take half the game. As is par for the course for those of you who played Epic Scale or massed battle games before, this game is brutal. There was at least one turn 1 tabled amongst the games of the weekend, and I had a couple of games where I was more than decimated by the end of the first shooting phase. All those aforementioned lovely painted models are going to get blown to pieces before they've even had a chance to activate. The side effect of this is that even more so than 40k, turns speed up fast. Invariably, the first turn would take easily half of the 3-hour window each game got to play out. The next turn would then take half that, and turns 3 onwards, half that again, because the time taken exponentially increases based on the number of detachments you have on the table. Not just because there's more to move, but there's more to do. You've got to assign your orders, and the more detachments, the longer this takes. You've got to reveal your orders, and the more detachments you have on the table, the longer this takes. Turn 1, you're likely going to be doing a lot more advanced orders as you manoeuvre and shoot, versus later turns when you're either charging into combat, so you won't be shooting, or you're happy where you are and you can first fire, cutting down your movement time. So be prepared to spend a long time on turn 1, but it is a ski slope from there. Thing number 3, point defense is king. When the rules were first released and there were all those options on whether to use las cannons or heavy bolters on your sponsons, and obviously the answer was las cannons, always las cannons, because they're obviously so much better. I mean, look at the profiles, how could they not be? Well, I'll tell you how they could not be. Point bloody defense. Do not underestimate the power that is shooting close to you, then running away. Or you can march 2 to 3 times your movement and still get to shoot when you arrive your destination. Even if it's only the light and AP0 weapons that get to do so, the importance of being able to shoot the same turn as marching in an objective-based game is so good. A las cannon isn't worth a thing if the model with it dies before the shooting phase. A point defense heavy bolter that can shoot straight away? Yes, please. Freedom of shooting is huge in this game. Number 4. Losing fast isn't a bad thing if you're at Warhammer World. A weekender at Warhammer World is a packed itinerary. There's very little breathing time, especially with how tight games ended up being. Most games only made it to 3 full turns before time up. The downside of this is that there's this little thing right next to the gaming hall called, now you might have heard of this, the Exhibition Hall. Yes, you know, the thing most people go to Warhammer World to see, the crown jewel of James Workshop's empire. And lucky us, included in the event ticket, was entry to this holiest of spaces. Unlucky for us, there was absolutely no time scheduled to go look around. No time that was until my first game of day 2. My opponent very kindly, and totally not just because he was much better at the game than me, tabled me before the end of turn 2. What a shame. What a gosh darn shame, wiping me out with 45 minutes of the slot to go, right before lunchtime. Anyway, I was able to spend an hour and a half wandering around the exhibition halls, gawping at the very real-life versions of the heavy metal miniatures I'd gawped at many a time in the pages of White Dwarf. I can't show any photos here because they're very strictly not about commercial use of amateur photos, and I guess for however many pennies YouTube decides to send me per video, this is kinda commercial. But let me tell you that the exhibition is beautiful. The old world displays in particular, orc wyverns climbing up palace turrets, skies filled with Khemri bone dragons. As a kit basher, it was an absolute delight to see how much care and love the heavy metal and exhibition teams put into making sure every display tells a story. Don't get me wrong, I could have spent the whole day there, and one day I will. But as a whetting of my whistle and a whetting of my appetite, that hour and a half was well worth the journey alone. The awesome games with awesome people, doubly so. Speaking of which, Number 5. The community is shaping up to be pretty great. There's always a risk with the first official tournament of a game that it sets the tone for the community to come, and there's an equal chance with a specialist game like this that it will be a fun, friendly place full of friends, or a win-at-all-costs competitive nightmare full of grumpy gamers. Without question, this was the former. The staff were clearly all about making sure the game was done justice, and they kept checking in with everyone that there were ideas and points to improve. I had the honour to play the 3rd place finisher, and his army was beautiful and he played wonderfully, and so gracious a winner. Very soon it became clear that he was going to win, the rock to my scissors with some excellent strategy to boot, but he again and again complimented my playstyle, seemed genuinely concerned by some of the better tactical decisions I made, and explained how he wasn't sure he'd be able to get around them, and was a gentleman throughout as he tore all of my Terminators limb from limb. Add this to the fact that the 1st place player, who was also the only player to beat that bronze medalist, was also clearly so loving towards the game and the hobby. Just, you know, what a great feeling to be part of such a supportive subsection of the hobby that's absolutely growing in the right direction. Epic by name, epic by nature. Really, what could be more important than that feeling in this list? Giant plastic Gundams. Number 6. Titans, go big or go home. At 2,500 points, there was only one Titan worth taking, and every top placing list used it. The Warmaster. 750 points of brutality, over 100 points per wound, with 12 void shields and a massive plus 18 close combat assault factor. They lock your opponent into a choice. Do you ignore it completely and hope it wastes its shots? Or do you put everything you have into it and try to take it down at the expense of actually chasing the objectives? Well, the answer is it doesn't matter, because either way it stops you doing what you wanted to do. These things are beasts, and there is simply no other Titan or combination of Titans which can challenge it. My Reaver's Titans, puny 5 wounds, 4 shields and 2 up save is nothing compared to a single weapon of the Warmaster, and it's 1 up save, for bloody hell, come on. I would definitely go so far to say that if you're planning on taking strategic assets, take the biggest asset you can for the points value game you're playing. Anything smaller is wasted points. But it can be beaten, either by another Warmaster, but that's boring. No, the thing that can beat it is simply volume of infantry, which means number 7 is going to be the second half of 6. Go home. Infantry. Don't waste points on tanks, armour melts. People don't. Or I mean, probably. Don't test that theory. But the point is that tanks take up a lot of points and still most of the time will pop to just enough -1 missile shots. They're distractions at best. Exception for transport tanks, Rhinos and Spartans are absolutely worth it, thanks to all that aforementioned tasty point defence. But battle tanks? With the possible exception of Lehman Russ tanks, generally speaking, tanks underperformed at the event. Heck, the winning list featured nothing bigger than a rhino, the War Master being a notable exception. In a game as objective-y as Legions, you want bodies on the board. And that's what invariably won all the games, including my own. The 3 games I won, I managed to kill my opponent's infantry before they killed mine. The games I lost, they managed to take out my infantry first. This isn't a game of tiny tanks. It's a game of even tinier soldiers. Number 8. Wolkers are the best of both worlds. Tanks melt, dreadnoughts don't. Dreadnoughts are beasts. Every flavour of dreadnought. Get as many as you can. March them forward, or even better with the new releases in a couple of weeks, dreadnought drop hop them down, and then proceed to win. The same goes for the Sentinels. They may not be as durable, but the sheer number of shots they put out made Sentinels the scariest thing on the table whenever I faced them. I don't know if it was just luck of the draw, but every dreadnought I used earned more than double its points back, and every dreadnought I faced was an absolute bastard. Not much scarier than 10 World Eaters Contemptor Dreads that have just revealed a charge order right next to you. Number 9. Solar Auxiliar are a hell of an army. Although the winner was a Marine heavy list, he was the outlier. The others in the top 3, and I think top 5, all had at least one pioneer formation of Solar Auxiliar. The winning armies had Ogrins, they had Velatari, they had bombers, lots and lots of bombers. If you're attending a competitive event, make sure you have anti-aircraft. Whenever a bomber appeared against me, it was always worth overwatching with whatever had the most shots to try and take it out before it was able to drop the bombs. Even hitting on 6s and still getting 4+ armour or 5+ chink was worth exchanging the shooting activation just to get that bastard out of the sky before my Terminators turned into Terminator-shaped holes in the ground. If I looked at an opponent's list and I saw they had 2 bombers and maxed out units of Velatari and Ogrins, I pretty much knew I'd be getting ready for another look around the exhibition halls. I'm not a competitive player, I will always build for fluff, but bombers do look fun, and it's making those piles of solar sprues look mighty tempting to use for something other than basing. And finally, number 10. Nick Baton off Warhammer TV is much taller than he looks on the screen. That's it. That's the point, he's really tall. So that's my list of 10 things I learned from a Legion's Imperialis tournament at Warhammer World. To sum it up, I super recommend it. The staff are lovely, the games are organised, the community is gorgeous and funny, and the game is great. In 25 years of the hobby, it's the most fun I've ever had doing it. Will I do it again? Absolutely. I don't know if I can afford the time or the money to do the one next week, but I will certainly be on board for the next weekender. And if they ever do a narrative event rather than a tournament, well, I'll be there before you can finish saying, keep on lit bashing.